A federal judge has blocked key parts of President Trump's executive order on mail voting, ruling the federal government overstepped into state-run elections. Nevada is among the states pushing back. Fox 5's Talia Kirkland spoke exclusively with the Nevada Secretary of State. Joins us now live with what happens next year, Talia.
Tom, today's ruling is the latest twist in a growing legal battle over who controls elections. The states are the federal government. Earlier this week, the Trump administration proposed having the U.S. Postal Service stop delivering mail-in ballots to states that refuse to turn over voter rolls. Nevada is one of those states, but today a federal judge blocked that directive. This afternoon, I spoke with Nevada's Secretary of State, and earlier as I shared some of our conversation, now I have more on why he says Nevada has one of the nation's safest elections. Take a listen.
MIT does a ranking of all the elections across the country. In 2022, Nevada was ranked number 13. We worked really hard over the last 2 years as my term as Secretary of State to build that infrastructure, to build that technology, and we are now ranked second in the country for our elections when it comes to safety and security.
Secretary, is voter fraud prevalent?
It is not. There is very little fraud in our elections. And that's true across the country, but I can speak specifically to Nevada. Nevada has some of the lowest fraud rates in the country.
Why do you think that the election has continued to be such a prevalent conversation?
Nevadans are going to decide who the next president of the United States is. And that's a great responsibility we have as a state, and it's a great responsibility we have as voters. And what they're trying to do is sow in chaos and create doubt in the process because they're trying to take over control of the system because they want to influence the system. You know, we have a certain individual in the White House who's trying to pick his voters rather than letting voters determine who our leaders are.
So for as of right now, Nevada's current mail-in voting process remains unchanged. However, this fight is likely nowhere near over as the legal battle over who controls elections continues to play out in courts.
Talia, thank you. We also reached out to Nevada's entire congressional delegation, but only heard back from Congresswoman Susie Lee, Senator Jackie Rosen, and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. They strongly oppose the Trump administration's efforts to restrict mail-in voting, saying voting by mail is a right for Nevada voters.